got all the branches here, and Ravi is going to help me here, ask some questions. But before we do that, we will start with the introduction of each.
I majored in cellular molecular biology. I was also in the Honors College, and now I'm an incoming dental student at Tufts University in Boston.
Okay. You got Anisha? Yes.
Hi, my name is Anisha Patel, and I'm a law student at Stetson University College of Law. I'm originally from England, so I have a funny accent, and I'm due to graduate in 2014.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Zuppo. I'm Assistant Dean of Admissions and Student Financial Planning at Stetson Law. I appreciate you having me today. And what Anisha did not tell you is she's a barrister in England as well, so she's very highly accomplished.
Good afternoon. My name is Nakul Batra. I studied finance and economics at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. I worked for 2 years in investment banking with Wells Fargo Securities, and I worked for another 2 years in venture capital here in Tampa at Ballast Point Ventures. Decided on a life change and have recently started medical school this past week.
My name is Ranjit Singh. I just graduated from the University of South Florida with a major in biomedical sciences. In fall 2012, I'll be starting USF's College of Pharmacy, class of 100 in a week.
Hi, my name is Ranil Patel. I'm a University of Florida graduate. I majored in biology, and I'm at Howard University College of Dentistry. I'm a third-year student.
Hello, my name is Bob Levine. I run Selective College Consulting. We're an independent private counseling service helping high school students get into premier colleges. I spent about 3 decades working for Harvard in interviewing and evaluating students, and now instead of filtering them out, I help students get in.
Hello, my name is Shankar Nair. I am a University of Florida graduate, class of 2010. I currently work in commercial lending over at Regions Bank in downtown Tampa, and I'm also a level 1 candidate for the 2013 CFA exam.
I am Shivam Kairod. I'm a second-year medical student at the University of Florida College of Medicine. I did 2 years at USF, then I did 1 year at UF, and then I started medical school. And I'm from Tampa, and I went to Hillsborough High School.
Good afternoon, my name is Shyam Patel. I'm a computer science University of Florida student. I have various internship experience working with Home Depot and NASA. I just moved actually back from Atlanta this weekend. And Sickles High School 2010. Maybe anybody from Sickles High School here? Didn't think so.
Hi, I'm Sonia Chetta. I went to Emory University for undergrad, and I majored in neuroscience and behavioral biology and had a minor in visual arts. And I'm going to Tufts Dental School this fall.
All right, we are.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vignesh Doraiswamy. I graduated from FIU with degrees in biology and biomedical engineering, the religious studies as a minor. And I was in the 7-year program there, but then I chose to stay for an extra year. So if anyone has questions about that, you guys can ask me about that. And I'm about 30% done with my 3rd year of med school here at USF.
Hey everybody, my name is Viraj Mehta. I also went to Hillsborough High School with half of the panel, I think. I graduated from University of Florida in 2009, go Gators. And I just graduated from law school from Nova Southeastern University in May.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, we have framed a few questions and we sent it to these people so that they can have an idea of what question they can expect. Manish and I both had our education in India, and our kids go to college here, so I probably belong under the ignorant parent, and probably Manish knows more about these things than I do. We have framed a few questions which are specific and a few questions which are general, with a specific thought process that parents and kids aspiring to go to college might get some useful information. Parents, you will get a chance to ask your questions, as well as the students. Please hold your questions, and after we finish with the panel, we'll open the questions for you so that you can ask them. Thank you. Okay, I believe most of you are from the IB background. Some of you may not. So this is a question that any of the IB candidates can answer first, and if any of you seem to think otherwise, then we'll give a chance to them. Okay. How much value will an IB diploma carry relating to admissions into an Ivy League or a state school? The question is open to any of the kids from the IB program.
All right, I guess I'll start.
Thank you.
I mean, the IB diploma, it definitely helps once you get into college because they do give you a lot of credits that you can come into. I think all the IB graduates got about 30. I think when we were at, I know when we were at UF, that's how many we got. So, and I mean, IB diploma itself, I mean, the ones that are in IB right now, I think you guys can attest that we went through a lot, and it kind of does prepare you for the long nights and the organizing and writing papers and all that. So, but I mean, the distinction between, I guess, an Ivy school and a regular college, I don't know if anyone else can talk about that.
I did IB as well, and I went to a state school, and I think it does help in terms of preparing you for college, but it is also not the end-all be-all. It definitely does not put you arm and legs above or arm and a head above everyone else. There are plenty of other people who have been through other magnet programs and have been through other college prep type programs. That's the reason that they're in their school too. There are a lot of intelligent people in this world, and IB helps distinguish you amongst maybe the Tampa population, but there are many other populations that you're really competing against to get into Ivy League universities and to some of the higher end state schools.
Allow me to give you the perspective of the admissions committee. Is that better? From the perspective of college admissions committee, getting an IB diploma, if you're in an area where an IB diploma is available, is quite important. It shows that the student has been taking on all available challenges. And if a school has IB and a student does not pursue IB, they wonder why. So the IB is, in a sense, a starting point. I agree it's not the end-all be-all. But if you have the opportunity to take a challenge, they're going to expect that you do.
Thank you. We'll move on to the specific question for medical school. Any of the medical school attendees can answer this question. What is the difference between the traditional medical school route versus the 6 or the 7-year program? Advantages and disadvantages from your perspective.
Yeah, I can start with this one. So the main difference for a 6 or 7-year route is they want to see you basically do what a traditional applicant's going to do in 4 years, but they want to see you do it earlier. So that means either in high school, if you're going to apply from high school onwards to the University of Miami or a similar 7-year program, they want to see you do a lot of things early on in high school. So volunteering in the community for hospitals, shadowing doctors, they want to see you show an interest very early on. So you have to work a little harder in high school, and then in undergrad it becomes a little easier because you've done a lot of the work that you would need to do later on, and you just done it earlier on. So I think that's a big thing. They want to see you commit yourself to medicine very early. For advantages, of course, it saves time. It saves a few years, and you don't have to stress as much about the MCAT or about GPA because you're on a more guaranteed route. And disadvantages, I would say, you may have less time to explore other fields because you commit yourself to medicine. You might not be able to travel abroad. And maybe a few other things there, but you just have to weigh that and see what's best for you.
I'd agree with most everything he said. Like I said, I started off in a 7-year program. I can't really tell you much about what to do in high school because I did middle and high school in India, even though I was born and raised here. But otherwise, you do save some time by doing a 7-year program or a 6-year program. I chose to stay because it allowed me to get an extra degree in engineering. It allowed me to study stuff about religion. I went to Florida State School, so I got paid to go to college, which is always a fun little bonus. But it really allowed me to take a lot of different classes. Once you start medicine, and especially now that I'm so far in, I can tell you that there's nothing else in your life in terms of learning. You can do other stuff, you can spend time on it, but at a very professional level, there isn't really the amount of time you'd want to dedicate to learn anything else. And I thought physics and math and engineering were absolutely amazing and fun to learn. So I spent an extra couple of years doing that, but I still finished in 4 years. And so I think that it was worth it. But it really, like you said, if you know you want to do medicine and that's what you love and you don't mind all the other things you could have learned or missed out on, a 7-year program works great too.
We have got one more question here for now each branch actually, so basically the question is that how GPA is important and what are the tests that you have to take in order to get into the branch of your choice. So like for dental it is DAT or law school it is LSAT and so on and so forth. So what are the good scores, what are the good colleges, what are the scores that different colleges, top tier schools versus middle tier schools and all that is looking for, So that is the question for each of you guys at this point, and maybe you can talk from your perspective, okay? Starting with others here, so
Are the discussions audible to everybody?
Yes.
So for dental school, generally a competitive GPA is around 3.7, 3.8. You can get more, generally the minimum is around 3.0, but to be even considered, most colleges say 3.5 is the cutoff point. DAT, the test is the DAT, the dental admissions test, and competitive score for that is 21 scores out of 30, I believe. And 21 is, because these schools are getting so much more competitive now, around 2021, and it seems the trend is it'll be raising.
Thank you.
I think as far as the GPA, that's something that I didn't have because I came from England, so Laura can definitely fill you in, for example, with the requirements at Stetson. But as far as grades as a general, you need to have good grades to show that you're a good, well-rounded candidate. And I had that in translation from my England degrees. As far as the LSAT score, that's the one test that schools use to compare you to every other student. It's a standardized test, so it's the one objective means to compare how well you're going to do. And Stetson and every other school has their minimum percentiles and their top grades of what they're looking at, what you need to be in as far as a range. I got a 156, which was enough to get me into Stetson, but it depends on what schools you want to get into, and of course, the higher you do, the more options you have available, and also the potential you have for scholarships as well.
The LSAT is a 4.5-hour exam, and the score range is 120 to 180. For a student who earns say a 177, 178, they're definitely getting into a school along the lines of Harvard, etc. The more attainable scores would be in the 150s, and that's where we see most of the test takers fall around the country. Just like you heard in the panel we had a few minutes ago, perfect practice may help you get a perfect score. And for all of these standardized tests that you're learning about today, you have to practice. You cannot take them cold and just see how you do. The LSAT does not test your knowledge of the law. It tests your critical thinking skills, your reasoning. It looks at your logic and analysis. So it's not really testing knowledge, whereas some of these other exams, you can prepare with a particular, based on the subject matter. With respect to grades, every law school is different. In fact, there are 205 ABA-approved law schools in the United States. We have 12 here in the state of Florida. There are a lot of choices. Law schools look at everything. We're going to look at your entire undergraduate academic record. We don't care about one particular major. We just want to know that you did great. You can come from engineering and mathematics and be a very successful attorney. We just want to know that you did well in the courses and that you can write well and do well in the LSAT and are involved in your community. Every school has a different requirement for grades, and I would just say that the stronger you are, and the higher in the 3.0 range, closer to 3.5, 3.6, the better schools you're going to get into.
Actually, just one, Nakul, I think you've got a very unique background, so talk both the business and the medicine, you know.
Sure, yeah, happy to. I'll talk first about MBA applications. There is a huge difference between business school and some of the other professions out there in terms of what you can do after you get an MBA. If you go to Harvard Business School, you have a lot different opportunities available to you compared to if you went to maybe a lesser known school. And that's because the companies that come and recruit out of these top 5, top 10, even top 20, top 25 business schools. To get into the higher end business schools, you need a GMAT score. GMAT is very similar to the GRE. It's out of 800 points. You typically need something above a 700. And they don't look as much into your GPA, although they definitely value a higher undergraduate GPA. I think typically for top schools, it's around 3.5, 3.6, which may be different than some of the other medical or law schools out here. But what they really look for is work experience. They want to know that you've had quality work experience, that you've taken leadership, that you've worked in teams, because that's a lot about what business school is. It's about making a good network, making connections, and becoming a leader. I think Harvard Business School and most business school admissions out there say, we don't teach you what you need to know, we teach you how to think. And they want to see that you had a track record of learning in the real world, and that you had leadership and you've taken initiative in the real world. And so they look for full-time career work experiences. So the MBA, unlike some of the other programs out here, is very much for people who are in the middle of their career, who've had typically 5 years of work experience is what they look for. About medicine, I will let some of the other medical students here speak on a more traditional path. I'll talk about my experience. I had a very compelling story switching from business to medicine, and I think USF, compared to other schools out there, really enjoyed hearing that story. And so it was very much a match based on my background and what USF is looking for, and that's how I got into medical school. I did all my prerequisites, all my science. I took the MCAT in 1 calendar year, and then spent the next year traveling and having fun. But you know, it's a different story, and I think more medical programs now are not looking for someone who's wanted to do this since they were 15. They want, at least in my case, they wanted someone who made an adult decision, who looked across the spectrum of different professions and said, this is the one that I want to settle on. So.
For pharmacy school, I'd probably have to say for a GPA, around 3.0 to 4.0. Obviously, you want a higher 3.0, 3.4, preferably, and then above that. That would make you more competitive. Also, like, you know, they've all said before, you also want to be a well-rounded student. They don't only look at GPA when they, you know, take you into consideration. As far as standardized tests go, there's the PCAT. You have to take that to get into pharmacy school if you're taking the traditional route. So it's a 280 multiple choice exam plus 2 essays. So it's a 4.5-hour exam. They don't really do it by score. Score is kind of relative to the past year's scoring. So they compare, and you're ranked as ranked with a percentile. So 60th percentile is where you'd be starting to be competitive, where they start to look at you. And you probably want higher scores in the chemistry, biology section. That's about it.
So, like I talked about for dental school, you know, you need to have a competitive GPA. You want to average DAT score, like you were saying, of 21, because as each year goes on and progresses, things get more and more competitive. So, the better your scores, the better your chances. But also some other things to look into is volunteer work and research opportunities, and basically, like Nicole was talking about, just show these schools what you're interested in doing. You might not know today, you might not know tomorrow, but the only way you're going to find out is by going out there and volunteering at a dental office. See what you like. See if this is something for you, then, you know, pursue it more. If not, then try to check other avenues to make a more educated decision. But, like you said, on the dental school, it's DATs, and you want about 21 and a GPA 3.5 and above would be adequate.
Robert, you can also bring in the perspective of other than the SAT or something like that. What is really important, from the college admission process? No, I'm just saying, Robert.
Okay. I want to differentiate between selective colleges and state and local schools, because if you're thinking about a selective or premier college, for your SAT score on a 200 to 800 scale, starting point is probably around a 700. On the ACT, probably around a 30. And for your GPA, perhaps a 3.5 unweighted. But I want to take you away from that for a moment. I want to caution you. The way the colleges review candidates at premier schools is different than the way they look at them in graduate schools, and it's different than the way they look at them in your state and local colleges. They're going to actually do a grading sheet on each applicant. And for academics, your SAT score will be part of that grade, as will your GPA, perhaps any awards you've won, or honors that are academically based. They will have a separate area for your extracurricular activities, which could include what you do after school, it could include community service, it could include work. They will have another factor, another grading area, which is your personal qualities, your personality, your character, your integrity. And they will look at each of those individually. When deciding who their students will be, they will then look at all 3 or perhaps 4 areas and look for the number that seems to be the most accurate trend. That's the number that they use to differentiate between the group that they will consider strongly and those they will not. One of the things that happens with a lot of families is there is so much emphasis on grades, GPA, SAT, that it happens to the neglect of school activities and after-school activities. It is very, very important for premier colleges to see that people are committed, to see that they spend time, to see that they are, for want of a better word, passionate. That you are not. So, in one area could leave a dearth of information in another area, and that could be a killer.
And to kind of continue on what everyone else has been saying so far, it's about the complete story. Now, in my case, I'm not, unlike most of these people here, I'm not in a graduate school. I'm actually right now out in the workforce. I've made this decision because I realize right now at this point in my life, on-the-job training and on-the-job experience to develop my critical thinking skills and to really make an impact on this community, I feel is best suited right now in the workplace rather than going to graduate school. That does not mean in the future I will go to graduate school. That is another option to better differentiate myself and also to better educate myself in the community and also in the world. But in this point in time in my life, the workforce for me is, where I wanted to be right now. Now getting to this position where I am right now requires the same skills and the same talents that you would need to go to any other school for that matter, or even for graduate school. I had to differentiate myself amongst my peers, not just by my grades, not just by my talent alone, but what have I been able to do? And what I've been able to do, that compelling story, was my full year studying abroad at the University of Manchester. I was able to explain to all the job interviewers that I was able to not only undergo and learn from a very enriched curriculum at the University of Manchester in the business school area, but I was also able to network with individuals from all over the world, and I was also able to get a better sense of what this world was about by traveling around and really meeting with different people. Because at the end of the day, as me as a business person, I meet with a lot of different personalities, not only within my workplace, but also outside in the community. And that for me is really crucial from what the job interviewers had seen. So having that story, the grades and the scores, yes, are important, but having that story and really showing people who you really are and how you can make an impact are, I feel, the 2 most important qualities for any position you want to go to.
So for medical school, you have the MCAT, that's your standardized exam to get you to medical school, and that's on a 45-point scale. And if you want to be competitive, you usually want to shoot at least about a 30. Although these days, like other schools have mentioned, it's trending upwards. So For UF, for my entry class, I think it was about 32.4. So around, I mean, of course over 30, but around 31, 32 is good. And as far as GPA goes, you want to shoot for about a 3.7 and above. And that's for a traditional applicant. But, you know, our class, for example, my medical school class, the average age for us was about 26, 27. So, like Nicole mentioned, a lot of places are trending towards a different direction. They want more diverse candidates because a candidate like myself, just coming out of undergrad, we're a dime a dozen, but they do like seeing people who've had different experiences. So it's different if you apply at different stages of the game.
As for engineering, I'd say that there's probably two different paths you can probably go to after graduation. It's the ones that go straight into the workforce, and of course the ones that go into graduate school. For the ones that go straight into the workforce, as for GPA, I would even say GPA is probably the third most important. First is probably work experience, second is your network and your personal skills, and third is your GPA. So for GPA, I'd probably say even like 3.0 to anywhere above that is guaranteed to get you anything that you need. In fact, as for job interviews, I've only been asked for my GPA about 2 times. I even leave it off my resume just because it's probably not even that impressive. But as for ones that are trying to go into grad school, you would still have to show that you're well-rounded, like everyone else said. You have to show these school interviews and on your application that you're looking for probably about a 3.5, anywhere above that. And also at the same time, you have your work experience. But if you're lacking in one area, you better be showing that you're making up another area. Such as if your GPA is low, I hope you have work experience at the same time to make up for that.
Yeah, for dental school, I agree with Adarsh and Ranil. About a 21 on the DAT is a competitive score, and about 3.5 and above. But in addition to GPA and DAT, I think extracurriculars and volunteer are extremely, extremely important. For example, I went on the Global Dental Brigades in Honduras for the past 2 years. And through these experiences, it really shows the passion you have for dentistry, and you can help people. So I think in addition to just GPA and DAT, all these volunteer experiences, even in your local communities and in third world countries that need your help, I think, really help. It's an extra push that can put you over the top and make you extremely competitive.
So one quick question for Sonia. Sonia, what are the different subjects that they test in DAT? If you can just mention that.
Yeah, so the DAT is pretty unique compared to MCAT. We have a section called the perceptual ability section. So dentistry is extremely hands-on. They focus a lot on those type of skills. So there's one full section that's basically all puzzles, and it's all pictures and no words, which I really like. So it's like a different type of test that really concentrates on different skills that are good for dentistry. And also we have a math section that goes up to trigonometry, and we also have, and everything else to say, we have physics, or we have no physics on the DAT, only biology, chemistry, and orgo, and we have a reading section as well. But also dentistry, they also emphasize the hand-on skills very much. A lot of dental schools like to see people taking sculpture or different things like those type of skills that showcase those skills.
So not much else to add in terms of what they already said for medicine, but just to give you an idea of how important the well-roundedness is, the age range of my incoming class when we started was 17, so there was a 17-year-old first-year medical student, all the way up to a 38, and the class before mine had a 52-year-old who was starting med school at the age of 52. So they do take everything else into account. The lowest GPA in my class, I think, was like a 3.0, and the highest, there were 4.0s. MCAT scores ranged from the 26s, 25s, 24s even, but there were also like about 30 people who got between 39 and 42 genius level scores. So they do look at everything. Grades and scores are very important, but don't forget to have fun and do other things that you enjoy that make you a more well-rounded person, not just a well-rounded candidate, because you want to enjoy your life as well.
Well, to echo off what everyone else has already said, there's a couple things that are unique about law school, which they mentioned earlier. You don't need a set major in undergrad. I mean, when I entered into law school my first year, I had an architect major sitting to the left of me, and I had someone that was practicing medicine for 20 years, he was 60 plus, sitting right next to the right of me. So, I mean, that's the one good thing about law school. I mean, some say it's not good, some say it is good because you kind of get to experience a lot more during undergrad. And the only other thing I guess I have to say is, listen, in undergrad, the GPA is what, all the parents stress. The grades are very important. Sometimes stuff just doesn't work out. You have some hard semesters, sometimes you have easy semesters, but as everyone already said, the extracurriculars are important to make you more well-rounded. And specifically for the LSAT, it's out of 180. If you're trying to aim for a top 50 to top 80 school, you need, the basic 3.5 GPA and probably higher than a 160, maybe a 160. 160 is a great score. But to tell you the truth, most of these schools that are top 80 and above, what they really do is they balance the GPA and the LSAT score. So if you have a low GPA, let's say you're at like the 3.0, if you can get higher than a 160, you're in contention with other students that are pretty much competing against you for that spot at that law school.
Thank you, Viraj. The next question we're going to start from you and come this way. If you could you please share some of your thoughts on the typical questions that were asked in the interview, and if you really got surprised with any of those which you never expected? Thank you.
Well, there's another unique thing about law school. There is no interview. So if you're an outgoing person, I mean, you can only really show what you are, because some law schools do require you to provide a resume. Actually, most, I think, do. So that's how they get to know you. I mean, so because there's no interview process, I would say if you're really considering law school, the best tip that I have is go to the law school, sit in on a class, talk to people that are there, and they're more than welcome to let you sit on a first-year class, which I'm telling you, that experience will open your eyes and you'll know that things are getting real and you're about to enter grad school. So that's my advice for that.
That's a very good, advice. So thank you.
So for medical school, I mean, it really depends on the programs. I applied to a lot of schools within state, a lot of outside state, some on the West Coast. So I had a whole bunch of interviews. My first interview was when I was about 18 years old. That's what 7-year programs, a lot of them do, is they make you interview right after freshman or sophomore year. But they don't go easy on you. They ask you the same questions they'd ask me 3 years later. And to be honest, I was at a complete loss for some of them. So for medicine, we were asked questions about ethical situations and what would you do if this person's on a ventilator? I was asked about Medicare laws, Medicaid laws, the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Would this patient qualify for this? But then they'll really also ask, why do you want to do medicine? And that's a question everyone asks, and it's one of the hardest to answer because they've heard it all. You can't give people who are interviewing you the same answer that they've heard from everybody else. You need to have something real. Kind of like Nicole said earlier, you don't want, I wanted to do medicine since I was 15. And they've heard that. They've been hearing that for years. Why did you want to do medicine from when you were 15? Was it because your parents told you? Because for many students it is. And that's not the best answer out there. So before choosing medicine, and I'll just kind of move away from the question for a bit, this is my day 7 of 13 days with no break. I'm on a little break now, but I'm still supposed to be at the hospital, hence my attire. I'm there from 6 in the morning till 10 p.m. at night, almost every single day sometimes. But I love it. I enjoy every minute of it. It's a blast. I get to work with patients. I get to make them feel better. Now, if that's not something you're going to enjoy, you have to know beforehand. That's why the process is so vigorous. That's why they want to make sure that the questions you're answering are genuine. And you have to show them that you really want to do this because this is the sort of stuff you'll have to deal with. Now, it's not easy. I'm pretty tired right now. I'm pretty tired all the time in 3rd year. But I enjoy it, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm learning a lot. So they want to see, I mean, you don't have to know the answer. I didn't always know them. I'm not sure I know some of them right now. But just be aware that the questions can be about anything, and they really just want to see how much you know, how well-rounded you are.
Yeah, for dental school, I think it depends on the school that you apply to. For example, I applied to Tufts and UF, and my Tufts interview was very laid back. They were really friendly. And my UF one was very strict because they have many applicants, so they were grilling me down like my resume. But I think at the end of the day, they want to see like how much of a genuine interest you have for dentistry. And as long as you can be yourself and show a genuine interest in the field, I think you're fine. And in terms, and then they just ask about your volunteer experience and research and all things that you should be comfortable answering.
Not so much for graduate school interviews, but I can attest for any job interview. First and foremost, they already have your resume. They know what you've done and what you have, but can you explain how you learned from that? How did you go about the process of working on a project, whether it's school or hobby project? Basically, they go through this because they want to know mainly, are you a cultural fit for the company that you're going to be working for? They want to know that would you work well with the teammates that you would have to be, because in today's workforce, you're always going to be with the team, and you have to have those personal skills as along with those technical skills that you learned in school. So, in interviews, you should already have your do some research. There's a lot of interview questions out there, just technical knowledge, kind of going on like what they would ask. Just be friendly, just be yourself, and just talk about like what you've done, and be ready to just explain on how you got to the process of doing that.
So I don't have too much to add for the medical school interview, but the same way he said that these admissions officers have been working for years and they've seen every answer. For that same reason, they don't expect you to say some outlandish answer that you've made up in the car ride over there. They don't need anything crazy like that. But as long as it comes genuinely from where you stand or what you've seen before, you can say, I want to do medicine because I want to help people, because that is a great reason. What doctor wouldn't want to help you? But you have to substantiate that with your own experiences and something that you've done that can give them something and saying, okay, he just didn't make this answer up. He really thought about it, and that's why he wants to do it. And so interviews, they can range, like we heard before, from very laid back interviews to very strict ones. And so one of my friends had an interview once at UF, and he said he was interviewed with a psychiatrist, so he likes playing mind games with the students. So he walked in, and the first thing he said as he sat down, the psychiatrist said, here's your resume, take it back, but probably next year you're not getting in here. And so the reason he said that, not because he said you're not going to get in, you just want to see how you react in his feet. You want to see if you can take the pressure, if you just back down, if you try to convince him. And so they might play some games like that also, so you've got to be quick in your feet, you have to be cool, but for the most part, they're just there to talk about your application. And they're not trying to necessarily play that, oh, I got your game, you said this, but it's really this. They just take what you put in your application as a truth. So they go off of that. So they will ask you questions, but that's only because they're assuming that what you put is what you've actually done. So you don't want to put something that you haven't done, but for the most part, interviews they're not something to worry about.
I will say I've had many various types of interview experiences. One where it's mostly behavioral based, where tell me about a time you did such and such, and I would explain the situation, the task at hand, the action in which I did, and what was the ultimate response to it. I've had also interviews where it was very technical based, for my job positions. One of which was, how are the 3 financial statements are linked? I even had a random question that said, who can you name all 9 Supreme Court justices? And this was in a interview day, in which I had 8 interviews back to back to back to back. And more or less, the story of all this is just be prepared, but also at the same time, you know who you are, you've gone through all the experiences, just be able to explain to the interviewer who you are, what your position is, and how you came to this door and how you came to this desk today. And ultimately, who you really are and why you're the best fit for anything, whether it's graduate school or this position, will really come out and will really convince the person behind the desk.
Robert, you asked one of these questions to the students, so tell us about what answers are really impresses you and what doesn't.
Well, after 29 years of interviewing on behalf of Harvard, I did 28 interviews last year. I pride myself as an interviewer on not asking the same questions that you'll get anywhere. I'm not looking for you to prepare an answer because that's not very helpful. What is probably most helpful to you as the student, as the interviewee, is to understand again the role of the interviewer. First of all, the interviewer for a selective college is usually an alumnus. They're doing it for love of their college, they're doing it as a volunteer. They're given a form, and the form has certain areas in which they grade. The same ones I talked about before, academics, extracurriculars, personal qualities. But the truth is, an interviewer is not a very good judge of anybody's academic prowess, and we really don't have as much information about your extracurricular activities. The purpose of the interview is to find you as a human being and to find out about your personal qualities. The interviewer, him or herself, really has one goal. The goal is not to learn so much about you. The goal is not to filter you out of the process. The goal is really to find somebody they like. That's it. The interviewers are volunteers. They want you to go to their college. They want to find somebody who walks in, sits down, talks to them, gives a conversation, and that they like. That they can turn around and advocate for you. Write a report that says, I like this person, please take them. And then they want the school to take you. And then they want you to take the school. They get very frustrated if you get into their college and you don't decide to go. So the truth, they're not there to evaluate you. They're more there to fall in love with you as a human being. So sitting down and understanding, they really want to find somebody that they can push. Because the number one reason that interviewers stop interviewing is volunteers. My kids never get in. I've been doing it for 10 years and my kids don't get into college. And I don't know why. Well, guess what? You're not our kids. But they do take ownership. And they want you very much to be accepted because that's their goal. So understand the interviewer is actually your friend. Don't give them the pre-packaged stuff. They don't care about that. They just want to have a conversation. They just want to like you. Once you realize that it's not about pressure and filtering, besides, let's face it, the things that you kids do now in high school are so far above my head. When you start talking about it, I'm just going to smile like I understand. But I don't. Just talk to them. Get rid of the nerves and realize if you give them what they need, which is the material to write a good report, just talk about things that you know well. Don't try to give the best answer. Try to give your answer, and that's what makes a difference.
Like they just talked about for dental school, questions range from, why would you like to go to dental school, or what is the history of school, to, one specific question I had, I didn't do so well in my organic chemistry my first semester, and the interviewer looked at my transcript and said, hey, what happened? And rather than fumbling around and making up some story, I told them the truth that said, hey, that semester I took on too much of a workload and we had someone pass away in the family, so it was a difficult time for me. And they talked to me about it. They worked with me and they understood, you go through life experiences. Things don't always go as perfectly planned. And it's how you take that situation and make it to the best that you can that they're going to look for and kind of evaluate you on. So you might not always have the perfect resume, the perfect anything, but if you can talk to them and level with them and get one-on-one with them and make them understand you as a person, I think you'll do fine. And another tip that I have is, you never really know how you sound. So, a good suggestion is maybe record yourself doing a mock interview. Have your parent go online and download a set of interview questions. There's plenty of interview books. Just Google something, you'll find it, and have your parents sit there with you and just kind of go through it, and then go ahead and play that recording back and see how you actually look from the other side. I know my biggest challenge was getting rid of saying the word I would always go and I had to teach myself stop saying that. And the only way I realized that was because I recorded myself and looked back at it later. So that's one of my tips.
For pharmacy school, I applied as an early decision applicant for USF, so I can only speak on that school. It's the only school I interviewed with. Their interview process was very laid back. For the longest time, it was my first interview for a school, and I thought I was going to be strapped to a chair with a gun to my head. I was like, oh my gosh, what are they going to ask me? But in reality, it's a very laid back process. They start you off, they'll do things like, for example, at USF, they gave us 5 pieces of spaghetti, they gave us a marshmallow, and a piece of tape. And they said, build it as high as you can as a team, right? So we had 5 interviewers, and we had, just simple team building activity. They take notes on who's leading, who has teamwork ability, who can communicate with others. It sounds so simple, but it's true. You need to know how to do these things. As far as the interview, I would say, yeah, definitely just be yourself. that's what they want. They want to see that you have half a personality when you walk in there. At one point in my interview, we totally ditched the question of, what does it take to be a pharmacist? I mentioned teamwork and how I'm a big sports fan. She said, "Are you a Steelers fan?" And it totally threw me off, but I totally answered that question. Just be yourself in the interview. They're not there to get you. They just want to find out that you have a personality, you can communicate with others, and about your title.
I think what Robert said is absolutely right. Generally, if you're at the interview stage, you've already made the cut. They already like you. They already like your resume. They already like what you're doing. I don't really have a whole lot to add to what has already been said maybe 15 times. But I'll tell you about some fun experiences I've had in an interview in the business world, especially coming out of college. They know you're an intelligent guy. That's why you're there. They know that you have personality, a little bit of personality anyways, and that you can communicate. You're already there for those reasons. They want to see if they like you, and they also want to know how well your brain works. So I was in an interview in Manhattan. The third year medical student, I didn't get your name, but you work incredibly long hours when you start out, and that's in pretty much any profession that you do. So they want to know that they can hang out with you. And how I got my first job, I don't know if this is true or not, but I had 6 interviews that day, and on my last interview, I sat down, and I put my hand on the table like this, and I had a fake watch on that I had bought in Istanbul. And the guy who was interviewing me said, "Wow, that's a great watch." I said, yeah, it's a great watch. How could a kid afford a $2,000 watch? I didn't. I bought it for 40 bucks in Istanbul out of the back of a jean shop. And so, but it was great because I got to tell him that story. And he instantly liked me. And I joined his group, and we had a great working relationship for the next 2 years. So, to sum up, a lot of this is just be yourself, find a reason for them to love you. And you guys are all great people, they're gonna love you. This is years away for most of you.
So Laura, same thing for you, just like Robert, you are at the other end asking the questions, right?
Right. One of the things that I would say is that the interview, even though law schools don't interview, the interview really isn't just about the formal interview. They are assessing you from the moment you correspond to them.
To fit into their office. Something that I always get while I'm doing at Stetson, but they ask about a part-time job I had when I was 19. I worked in jewelry sales, selling diamonds and watches for 2 years, and people always seem to pick up on that because they want to see how well you can explain that you worked in a team and in a professional environment, and how you're willing to put that extra commitment into something which is not related to school or even the profession. So I think as long as you are good in every aspect of your life, whether it's school or employment or, something I do now is I'm a part-time student at Stetson, so I work full-time during the week and go to school in the evening. So I have people during the week, employers and colleagues who are willing to write recommendations for me and vouchers to my character and to say that I can work in a team and that I'm willing to work hard to do that. But so it's not always about your grades, and what most interviewers probably would ask about is things that aren't on your resume and things that will probably throw you off guard because you're not expecting them to say that. But the key is that they want to know what kind of person you are, and things that you do in your spare time dictates how well you're going to fit into the non-academic life at whichever school you choose to go to.
Right, so I'm the last person speaking this time, so I don't really have much to add to what's already been said. But essentially, as far as questions go, usually I went to 5 interviews, and a lot of them ask, why this field, why dentistry? Some of them pointed to a specific part of my application, my transcript. They're like, you have a B- in this class, whereas you have a bunch of A's everywhere else. Why that? They'll even ask about extracurricular activities. What do you like to do in your free time? Schools ask, why choose us? That's a big question. What can we offer to you, and what can you offer to us? But mostly I think the interview is an opportunity to show that you're actually a person and not just an application with numbers on it. In my interview in NYU, they actually didn't ask any questions except, how do you like New York as so far? And we just had a conversation. So they just like to see who you really are as a person.
Okay, at this point, we will open up the floor to all of you guys to see if you have got some specific questions, and you can ask to specific individuals, or you can kind of ask as a general question. But parents, students, I mean, you are most welcome to ask the questions at this point. We have got about 20 minutes, we'll be concluding this discussion around 2:15. So I think, you've got about 20 minutes to ask the questions. And if you don't, then we will ask, Okay, go ahead. Adit, yes.
I have a question. Adit,
come here.
I have a question about the essays of the various universities and colleges, which I believe was not mentioned. How are the essays read, and what is the weight in the application? Especially to the former Harvard University interviewer.
I guess I'll go first. The question was, how are the essays evaluated, and what are they looking for? When you complete an application to an Ivy League college, or Stanford, or Vanderbilt, Duke, Chicago, they basically use the same application form. It's called the Common Application, and the Common Application has 5 topics, and they ask you to write about one of those topics. The truth is, those topics are more like traps than topics. Last year, one of the topics was to write about a fictional character. Well, if you're going to write about a fictional character, how are you going to explain to them who you are? You might do a great job writing about the character. They're not looking at your ability to write beautiful poetry. If you can win a Pulitzer Prize, that's great. If you can't, don't write that way. And even if you could, it's already on your resume, so don't worry about it. What they really want to find out about is you. Remember, they look at academics and extracurriculars and personal qualities, and this is really the first and perhaps only place on the application where you have a moment to talk about who you are, as apart from just a listing of the types of things you've done, the scores, and the like. So the direct answer to the question is perhaps not what should you write about, but what you should not write about. You should not write about something that is not you. You should not write about how you have a particular philosophy. One of my favorites of all time was that I am a flaky croissant with many layers of talent. That gentleman did not get into his first school. I know that. That was my cousin. It does happen. Those are catastrophically bad essay answers. The good one is, my name is, and I don't believe that there is ever a valid justification for willful ignorance, followed by some stories about their life. And what we do in our business is to show people how to bring in stories so that you're not just telling, but don't make the essay a full story, because that sounds kind of like middle school, not college.
I have a slightly different perspective, just because I'm looking at students who are applying to graduate school. And one of the things that we seek is the reason why you are applying to Stetson versus another law school. So if you are maybe filling out an application and you're given an opportunity to share with that institution why you want to apply to them and why you want to go to them, go to their school, it's a really good opportunity to show that you've done your research and that you're not just picking that school just because. So if you do have an opportunity to write about why you are interested in that particular school, take advantage of it. Law schools do not have a set of 5 standard questions. We create our own. What we're looking at is how well you write. Are you clear, concise, and persuasive? Is your grammar strong? And I will just explain to you one of my favorite techniques for editing, and it's called the read aloud. You should ask someone, probably not mom or dad, because they tend to be a little biased. They like you a lot. Maybe have one of your friends or a teacher read your essay out loud back to you. It is the best way to catch the mistakes, the froms and forms, the there, and there that are wrong. When I have someone applying to law school with a mistake-filled essay, they are more likely to be denied. And that is not something you want to have happen to you. So make sure you have someone you trust edit your essay, and make sure you pay a lot of attention to detail. Because again, for lawyers, we want to make sure they can write. They have to pay attention to details. We don't want to hire a lawyer who doesn't pay attention to details. They have to be very precise. So that's our perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for wonderful information. I want to steer this conversation to a different section. You all talked about the academics and the requirement for admission to either undergraduate program or to professional medical school or law school and such. Would you speak to the matters of financial consideration as a decision-making point when you were looking for undergraduate program? My son is going into 12th grade, so we are going to be dealing with this very important aspect of admission process.
Also, maybe each of you guys can maybe even say that how much it costs for 1 year of medical school or dental school or whatever. So,
when you're talking about undergraduate colleges, there are 3 types of money available. Student loans, which you got to pay back. Scholarships, such as merit scholarships, athletic scholarships, which are great as long as you continue along those fields. As long as if you go to a challenging college, you keep your grade point average up. Most of the premier selective colleges also have something called financial aid. It doesn't apply to everyone, but it applies to a lot more people than you might think. Financial aid is not a loan that you have to repay. It is not based upon your continuing merit. So if you come in as a swimmer and you decide to quit, that's okay. Financial aid is based upon the ability of the parents to pay. It's based upon family income. These premier colleges use the FAFSA form just like the state and local ones do. But what's amazing is as much as the big ticket item colleges cost a lot of money, nearly $60,000 a year, what's amazing is that very few people actually pay that much. I'll give you the Harvard example. Harvard is probably close to $60,000. And be sure when you look at numbers, you're looking at not just tuition, but room and board, insurance, even travel. That's all built in that high number. What's interesting is that 75% of the students are on some form of financial aid. Now my daughter went to Florida State University, and I can tell you it's very difficult, even with ramen noodles, to get out of FSU for less than $15,000 a year. What's interesting is that at Harvard last year, 60% of the class, that's more than half, paid a total of $12,000 or less, and that 20% of the class went for free. All they asked was that they do a part-time job. So in considering colleges, yes, the US News and World Report will tell you how expensive they are, but there's another topic, what's the best value? And the value is the overall cost. And financial aid, which these colleges have very large endowments, are able to provide. Last year, Harvard provided $178 million in financial aid to its undergrads. So don't reject universities that you think are too expensive because they're too expensive. In fact, you don't have to accept their offer of admission until after they've told you what they will do for you in terms of the overall cost. In fact, every college that gives financial aid is required by federal law to have on their website a calculator so you can get an idea. Now, who does this apply to? Families making up to $150,000 a year get financial aid. So, to the extent that you think it's too expensive, maybe yes, but maybe no.
To take a crack at that?
I was going to add to that, like he was saying, it also, one big consideration you should take is not just the tuition, but like you said, the room and board and fee. Florida, So your total expense maybe at NYU might be $110,000 a year, versus at the University of Florida, you might only be taking out loans for $60,000, $70,000. So that's something you also have to consider is, if you're looking at just the cost basis, is aside from financial aid, you should also weigh out the room and board, the cost of living, and those types of expenses, because those will come and play in a factor.
One thing I'll say as well is that I went to an out-of-state school, not a private school, not Ivy League school. And most, especially big out-of-state universities, they'll obviously break their tuition in terms of in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition. Most universities allow you to get residency in that state after the first year. UNC was not one of them, but I know for example, Virginia, Texas, Washington, Michigan, which are all big, sometimes dubbed public Ivy universities, they do help you get in-state tuition. And I've had friends go to extreme lengths to get in-state tuition as well, including their parents got legally divorced so that he could get in-state tuition, but that's another topic.
Laura, you are locally here from college here. So what is the typical fee for your school?
This year, our tuition for a full-time student is $37,400 and some odd dollars. But we are actually average in terms of our flat tuition with private law schools in the Southeast United States. A private law school in New England, for example, is probably $42,000 to $45,000 a year or more. State law schools, for example, the University of Florida is approximately, I want to say $21,000, right around there, maybe Florida State around $19,000. So you can see even at the state level, the law school programs are not inexpensive, they're pretty pricey.
Questions?
This is for the one who switched from business to medicine. Naku, why did you switch?
I feel like I've gotten that question 100 times today. It was a very personal decision. I was 26 at the time I left. I was very fortunate that I made a good amount of money in my first 4 years and saved quite a bit of that. And my firm also gave me a natural breaking point. They said, you can stay with us at your current position, or you can go get an MBA, spend $100,000, $120,000 in 2 years of your life and come back. And I had been through 4 years of finance, and before I said, let's go ahead and do the MBA, I said, let's slow down and maybe travel a little bit. So I went traveling, and I thought about doing a variety of different professions. And that's one thing I'll say, is that the panel has done a very good job of representing a variety of different professions, but there are lots of different jobs in this economy that are not associated with graduate school. So I thought about everything. I thought about becoming a priest. I thought about becoming an auto mechanic. I thought about going to law school. I thought about going to engineering school. I thought about dental school as well. I thought about a variety of different things, and ultimately, I took a deep look inside my soul. Took a deep look inside what I wanted to do, what I wanted to get out of life, and found that medicine, for me, provides that solution. So it's a very personal decision. I think a lot of people a lot of my friends at the age of 25, 26 went through a very similar existential crisis. You grow up a lot between the age of 22 and 25, especially if you have real world experience, you grow up a lot. And one of the biggest formational, developmental things that I went through, I did study abroad my junior year of college. And then I worked in Germany for the summer following that. So like Shankar, who also went abroad for a year, I did about 8 months in Europe. And that really opened my eyes to the world. And I really learned a lot about who I am and what I want. And I think that's one thing we haven't hit on is the value of real world experience and what you get out of life. By seeing someone else do it differently, by seeing someone else think differently, you're forced to ask yourself the question, why? Why am I doing it this way? Why are things done this way? And it provides for a lot of opportunity of self-reflection. And so I knew when I left finance that I wanted to reflect on myself, and I thought the best way to do that was to get out of my circle of influence. When I was 18 years old, my circle of influence was the Tampa Bay area. When I was 20 years old, it extended to generally the Southeast. I went to the University of North Carolina. And when I was 22, 25, it was pretty much the East Coast United States. But now at the age that I am, I'm able to have a lot more adult conversations with people all over the world. And so travel has been hugely fundamental for me in my development. And so the answer to your question is I think you have to look inside yourself, and one of the ways I looked inside myself was I went through a developmental process by traveling the world.
Any more questions here from the crowd? I will ask a couple of questions here maybe. A lot of time, I think, the students are kind of, if they are not doing A or, top SAT scores or something like that, people think that, okay, everything is lost, So what is the kind of a message for those kinds of students? I mean, so that is one question. And the second question is helicoptering, I mean, we all, from the Indian community are maybe not only helicopter parents, but we hover too close, So I think, what is your take there? And maybe if you can give some opinion there, and maybe any one of you.
So, personally speaking, and I'll be quite honest, I didn't get into dental school the very first time I applied. And so, growing up in the family I have, like at first it was kind of looked at like, hey, what didn't you do? Why didn't you study hard enough? Why didn't you do this? But when I took a look back at it, I decided I wanted to take those lemons and turn it into lemonade. I wanted to make that opportunity something worth, fulfilling for me. So rather than sitting around and moping around that, hey, I didn't get in, I looked at my own resume personally and I said, where do I lack? Some of these classes I didn't do so well in, so what can I do to prove that I'm a good candidate? So I went ahead and did some post-baccalaureate classes and took some extra classes at USF here locally. And something else I did that I feel that was truly enriching for me was I went and found a job. I worked at Bank of America as a teller, and what it did for me was it made me more professional. And I know that might sound a little weird, but what I mean by that is when I first came in working there, I had horrible verbiage. My vocabulary was basic, or just the way I spoke to people, it just wasn't professional as you would want it to be. And so working at the bank, I remember the first thing in that first week of training they did was they give you a pamphlet and say, these are the words you should not use, and these are the words you should use instead. And so just working at the bank for a year, I got more comfortable talking to complete strangers that I've never met in my life, and really learning how to connect with the random people you meet throughout your life. And so if you don't get in by chance, let's say, I wouldn't consider it to be the end of the world. Take it as an opportunity, use it to motivate yourself to do something a little further, and go ahead and keep trying. It's not if you fail, you're done. It's just keep trying and you will succeed. So that's my input on that.
We ran into this all the time with the Harvard Schools Committee. I would be disappointed when excellent candidates didn't get into my college. Here's the interesting thing though. Students, people, mature at different rates. You know that somebody who's 13 may be very different in just height, weight, their maturity mentally. So they're forced, or you're forced in a sense, to be at your best when you're 17 during a period of a few months. That's not necessarily fair, because maybe you didn't mature at the same rate as somebody who matured a little quicker. Sometimes there are excellent candidates who have maxed out in high school, but are about to go on to bigger and stronger things. So I tell people, first of all, don't be disappointed. It's not that your life is over. It may be that your life is just starting to begin. Now, when it comes to what we do, we try very hard to get people away from the idea that there is one school for you. There are several schools. The important thing, though, is that you know which schools are a good match. I met with a student yesterday who very much wants to be in event planning, and she picked a college as her first choice. And then I asked her, Do they have event planning? I don't know. You want to study it, but maybe they might even offer it. So we kind of drill down on the personality, on the individual, on who you are, and make sure that where you're looking is the right fit, because that's part of the process. There are plenty of people who go to Ivy League schools that don't do well in life. There are plenty of people who drop out of Ivy League schools that do famously after just a couple of months in a college. So try not to focus on what one college admissions committee says about you. Let's say they had 100 spots and you were number 101, it still feels like a total failure. It's not. You'll get there. Don't worry if it's not right away.
As far as not doing well in the SATs, I can speak for myself. I didn't get the greatest score. It was okay. And then, I got into USF undergrad. My first 2 years did not go so well. Not because, some tragedy or anything like that. I wasn't performing well. What's important is that you know how to bounce back from those types of things. You fall and you get back up. You hear that 1,000 times, but it's true. Keep adapting. Keep adapting to yourself. If you don't think you're doing well in one area, see how you can improve, right? And eventually my last 2 years were great. My PCAT score was great, and I got into a pharmacy school that I wanted to get into. So, you can be down, but you're not out. Just keep trying to bounce back.